Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to this session on the devastating three-year war in Sudan. And I'm very grateful to the Munich Security Conference for putting this on the main stage, because this is a war that really matters. I think you know some of the statistics: 14 million displaced, 30 million needing aid, 7 million facing famine. And this war is spreading. It is not stopping. Today, what I hope we're going to talk about is how to bring peace. Humanitarian aid is important, but we need to stop the war. This session is going to be in two parts. The second part will be the envoy of Donald Trump, President Trump, to this issue, and some foreign ministers. But first, let me welcome onto the stage Mr. Kamal Idris. Mr. Idris, will you come? Thank you. So, Mr. Idris was appointed last year by the Transitional Sovereignty Council of the Sudanese Armed Forces as Prime Minister. Now, not all the countries in the world recognize Mr. Idris as Prime Minister, but he is a very important person in any peace process that there may be. And so for that reason, we're very grateful to him for giving his time for the next 15 minutes in the first part of this session. So, Mr. Idris, there seem to be many different peace processes at the moment, and there is one which is called the Peace Roadmap, which I think has your name on, which you went to the UN with. I read a little bit of it. It seemed to involve the other side, the rapid support forces, surrendering completely. How's that going to work as a peace process?
Thank you very much indeed. Good evening, everybody.
I think you need a microphone. I think they're going to...
The voice is very loud.
Very loud, but you need a microphone for the broadcast. So, Mr. Idris, if you can use the microphone.
Before answering this important question, please allow me to establish 6 important points.
3 important points.
6.
There's no way that's going to happen.
Agree, but I will be very brief. First and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, Sudan is a historic country, is a historic nation and ancient civilization. You all know that. So I'm just stating the obvious. Second, I wish to commend and compliment the tripartite arrangements working for peace in Sudan. I underline tripartite arrangements, tripartite talks, tripartite peace initiative in Sudan, initiated by His Excellency President Donald Trump of the United States of America, His Excellency President El-Sisi of the Republic of Egypt, and His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. I thank these 3 international personalities for the positive talks in fostering peace in Sudan.
Which you have not agreed to. You have not agreed.
We have initiated, Ms. Moderator, our own Sudanese own peace initiative, which I presented before the Security Council of the General United Nations Security Council. This initiative presented by Sudan, this initiative creates complementarities and synergies with this tripartite initiative by the 3 leaders.
And it involves the other side surrendering all the territory they control and going into camps to be vetted. Is that right?
No, this is a global peace initiative.
But that's one of the...
It is a win-win. We're not saying...
How do they win?
I will tell you in a minute. And this initiative has been supported intensively and extensively internally in Sudan before the outside world. the majority of the Sudanese people, the overwhelming majority of my people supported this initiative. Then the United Nations, led by the Secretary General of the United Nations himself, the President of the African Union, the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, the Organization of the Great Lakes, the Organization of Islamic Conference, the World Muslim League, the World Council of Churches, and many others,
people.
and many others, internally and externally.
But what we need to know is how is this going to bring peace? Because I have read what this proposal is, and what I don't see is compromise. And I think that what we know is that you make peace with your enemy, not your friend. So there has to be some compromise. Where is the compromise in this proposal?
This initiative focuses important elements, the restoring the legislative legal authority in Sudan. One authority, one nation, one country, and the most important element is protection of civilians. We all sing this song, protection of civilians and the rule of law. Who contests this in this room?
So,
anyone contest civilian protection or the rule of law?
I think we can all agree with that. So how do you come to a ceasefire? Because the ceasefire, which the Quad, which is the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and the Americans, the Quad have come up with a peace proposal, and my understanding, and you can correct me, is that the Sudan Armed Forces have not agreed to that ceasefire. Is that correct?
There is no formal comment, and by the way, I would like to reiterate here, all proposals we have received from any party, we gave our reaction, whether this is positive, negative, or we have provided concrete comments. I underline, I see the tripartite arrangement. So far, we have been holding serious talks with these three countries, individually and collectively. I'm not commenting about the Quad.
So no ceasefire then?
Sorry?
No ceasefire agreed then?
There is no concrete agreement which we have received and agreed upon. And please remember, if you are under the impression that we have received from any country, any authority, a concrete proposal to which the Sudanese state, Sudanese government, or the Sudanese people, we have 40 million people in Sudan monitoring this minute by minute, second by second. This is our broader parliament. We have not yet agreed on anything. We do not have on the table of the government any concrete proposal.
But a humanitarian ceasefire is absolutely urgent, isn't it?
Ceasefire in itself is not an end.
But it is a beginning, and we haven't got to a beginning yet.
We are not here to say ceasefire. Ceasefire without complementing other arrangements of the so-called DDR, the doctrine of the DDR. Everybody knows what I mean by DDR.
Tell us.
Ceasefire as an end in itself is not a solution.
A ceasefire is a beginning, not an end.
There is no beginning, there is no an end. All these initiatives, all these steps must go hand in hand, concurrently.
But if you don't start somewhere...
And tomorrow we initiate war again.
But you have to start somewhere. And you start with a humanitarian ceasefire, and then all these other elements, which of course you're right, are tremendously important, follow. But if you don't start with a ceasefire, then the people are continuing to
not an end in itself. Please remember this. Can you tell me one single president in Sudan or in Africa where we have established truce as an end itself and it led to a successful outcome? Zero. Truce as an end in itself will never work unless it is coordinated and connected with other arrangements. DDR, relocation of the militias, and in our case, these are not militias, by the way. These are mercenaries, and some of you would have followed my statement, which I sent to the Prime Minister of Colombia. The majority of those fighters are mercenaries. I say it publicly, from Colombia, from Ukraine, from many other countries. These are not fighters.
And what about the United Arab Emirates? What is your position on talking to the United Arab Emirates?
United Arab Emirates have to come to an agreement to stop providing any assistance and weapons or support to those mercenaries. Once the United Arab Emirates did stop that, we can ourselves enter into serious talks, even with the United Arab Emirates. But under the circumstances, we have evidence beyond reasonable doubt, established by prestigious organizations, the United Nations system of organizations, prestigious universities in the United States of America. They did say that. It is not us. It is not Kamil Idris who said this.
What,
These are established reports.
Yes.
So it is up to the United Arab Emirates to defend themselves, stop this, and then we can enter into
You have no idea how quickly time goes. I'm going to go to the audience for a couple of questions, because soon they're going to clear us off the stage, you know.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Oh, maybe no.
Are you just giving me these few minutes?
Yeah, I am. I'm that mean.
Very serious
it's not
moderator.
me. It's the it's the organisers. Listen, does anybody have a question? Otherwise, I can continue. Yes, the gentleman there. They're bringing you a microphone, sir.
Have you talked to the RSF?
Have you talked to the Rapid Support Forces, your enemy?
No. First of all, let me clarify. RSF was established by Sudanese law. RSF has been dissolved completely. That era of Can I finish, please? Do you want me to finish? Or
yeah, please go ahead. You're claiming that the
RSF does not exist anymore. The organization that exists is a combination of militias and mercenaries. The majority of the fighters are mercenaries, as I have just said a few seconds ago, from Colombia, from Ukraine, and from many other countries.
So who is there
to
make peace with then?
You see, these are established reports in the media and in the international media. It is not Sudan who's saying this. These are
who is there to make
reports,
peace with?
evidence beyond reasonable doubt. You understand this term in law?
sir,
evidence beyond reasonable doubt.
So who is there to make peace with? If you are denying the existence of your enemy,
We are
who
not
do you
denying.
make peace with?
We are not denying the existence. We are saying the fighters now are mercenaries, prohibited, banned by international law. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to abide, listen to this very carefully, by the Charter of the United Nations and by the basic principles of international law. We cannot contradict ourselves. With whom does Sudan fight today? With mercenaries. Sudan is today, but tomorrow is many neighboring countries, the Horn of Africa, and this is a direct threat to the international peace and security.
I think we can all agree.
We're not saying we don't want to
agreeing that this war is a direct threat. Do I have one more question to Mr. Kamal Idris, not from his own delegation, but from somebody else?
This delegation, I think, is
Gentleman
banned.
over there.
Thank you. Philippe Bolopion, I'm the Executive Director of Human Rights Watch, and I'll have questions later as well. But I wanted to ask you, first, we fully recognize that the Rapid Support Forces have committed atrocious crimes, especially when they took over El Fasher, and we believe there is
Can you make it quick, because I can
I will. There is also ample evidence of the UAE support for the Rapid Support Forces. But your forces as well have been accused of serious violations, including indiscriminate bombing. So what are you doing to keep that in check and to make sure that your troops are not
Let me
committing
clarify.
violations?
These are not simple crimes. These are war crimes.
What, committed by the Sudan Armed Forces?
Crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity. Atrocities beyond the description of words, as established by various reports. So what SAF, the Sudanese army, was doing were in private self-defense. This is the army that is under the constitution. They are under obligation to defend Sudan and the Sudanese people. So it is not a traditional war where fighters were coming to attack you. These were the guardians of national institutions. They attacked these institutions, they destroyed the infrastructure, they killed people, displaced persons, raped women, killing the parents in front of their eyes. These are crimes beyond the description of words. And I would upgrade the word war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is a definition of a new type of crimes. And if I were to negotiate with the ICC, I would upgrade the level of crimes to a completely different level of crimes, which is not yet described by humanity.
Mr. Idris, you know how quickly time has gone because you have spoken so much, and we are grateful
Sorry
to you
to be
for that.
talkative, but
Sorry
remember
to be
I'm
talkative.
defending my people.
Talkative. But
I'm
we are very
defending
grateful.
person.
But we are very grateful to
Thank
you
you
for
so
your
much
time.
indeed.
Now, ladies
Thank
and gentlemen, Mr. Idris is going to hand me his microphone. He is going to exit the stage, so am I. They're going to pull on some more chairs, and then we're going to hear from some other people involved in Sudan. So don't move. There is more coming.
I think the moderator
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Please remain seated, ladies and gentlemen, as we're preparing the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We will continue momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, I kindly ask you to remain seated. Channel 4, Lindsay Hilson.
Thank you. And please welcome the team. Please come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted that we have this very high-level panel here to talk about this subject, which is very dear to my heart. So we have here Reem Alibali Radovan. She's moving across. She's from the Federal German Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development. Yvette Cooper is the British Foreign Secretary. Massad Boulos is President Trump's envoy to, I've got the Arab world, Middle East, and I think also Africa, just a small part of the world. And Mohammed Fateh Rahman, who is from Khartoum and from the Youth Alliance. Mr. Boulos, can we start with you, because you've been very involved in peace talks, particularly with the Quad, which we were talking about earlier, which is the US, Egypt, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. So can you just update us? Is it peace in our time? Can we be hopeful?
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a great honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It's also an honor to be here with the distinguished panelists, including Secretary Cooper, with whom we're working very closely, and I'll update on that, and the Honorable Minister Radovan as well. And my dear friend Mohammed, thank you. Just by way of a quick update, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the Quad or any other country or organization, I'm speaking on behalf of the United States. We've done extensive work both with our Quad partners and many other partners, including the UK and many others, and we will list them as we go on. We've done extensive work. We've been in continuous contact with both parties to work on the Quad roadmap that we put out on September 12th. The roadmap starts with a humanitarian truce and ends with a political transition process. So on the humanitarian truce, we presented an initiative, we presented a strong text to the parties that addresses all aspects of this, let's call it temporary ceasefire or truce. We have also engaged in extensive consultations with both sides, and then we've reached, at some point, an understanding that it will be most useful to go through a UN mechanism. So we proceeded with that. We've been working with OCHA specifically, and with the UN Secretary General and his team to come up with a UN mechanism that will help implement and monitor this ceasefire or this humanitarian truce. And we've worked on it for weeks, and I can say that we announced that in Washington a few days ago, along with our partner, Tom Fletcher, that we do have a draft mechanism. It's going to be hopefully finalized very soon by the Secretary General's office, and we will be ready at that point in time, hopefully within days, to present the final draft to the parties and hopefully get their approval.
Can I interrupt you just 1 minute? Because I've just been speaking to Mr. Kamal Idris, who, as you know, was here representing the Sudan Armed Forces, one of the parties. He said there was no reason to have any kind of ceasefire or truce until you had everything arranged. And then he denied the existence of the Rapid Support Forces, which would be the other side, the enemy. He did not give the impression of a man who was about to sign on the dotted line.
Well, this was very interesting. I heard a bit of it as we were coming in. This was quite interesting. No, the realities and the facts on the ground are quite different. We all know that there are two parties to this conflict.
Yes.
We are, as mediators, we are not taking sides. We call them out whenever they cross any lines, and they've crossed some few. When the RSF committed atrocities in Al-Fashir and elsewhere, we even refer to it as genocide. Officially,
yes.
This is the US position. When the other side used chemical weapons, we've also called them out, and this is our US official position. So these are facts on the ground. Unfortunately, there are two parties. One may have committed much more than the other, but we have to work, as mediators, we have to work with both sides to get to an end, a peaceful end to this war. We all know that there's no military solution. This has to end peacefully through a negotiated process.
I think that most of us can agree that, you know, a negotiated process is what is necessary. I suppose what's concerning me is that I see the war spreading. I see these camps in Ethiopia for the RSF. I see a drone base in Egypt backing the SAF. I don't see the United Arab Emirates backing down on its support for the RSF. And then I've just had this very interesting conversation with Mr. Idris. So at the moment, I'm afraid I'm not feeling very hopeful.
Well, I would tend to agree with you if you see what's happening, especially in recent weeks. Of course, one would have some doubts. But what I can say on behalf of the United States is that President Trump is committed to resolving this war, and he has made this position very clear. He just spoke about it very recently, just a few days ago, once again, and he made his position very clear. He wants the suffering to end, the suffering of the Sudanese people.
But what leverage do you have with the parties or with their backers? I mean, you have a lot of leverage with the UAE. They're one of your closest partners.
We're working with our Quad partners, both the UAE and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Egypt as well. But like I said earlier, we're working with many others. And each of us can bring something to the table. When there's a collective effort, including, let's not forget also the quintet. They've done a good job. And this is not the only track. Of course, this is the most urgent, and President Trump has expressed it very clearly. The humanitarian crisis is the world's biggest humanitarian catastrophe. And this suffering must end. It must end very quickly. That's why we've been working with OCHA. We've been working with other organizations and the UN generally. In addition to other humanitarian organizations, we want the aid to get in.
Sure.
And as you said, we're very concerned about any sort of external support. The Quad has made this position very clear. We would like to see an end to this external support, and we've taken measures.
Except for the fact that the Quad are part of the external support. But let me just bring. I want to speak to you, Foreign Secretary, because I know you've just been in the region, and just very briefly, can you just tell us something about the sexual violence against women and girls? Because I think that that's another thing we can agree on. That this is one of the most appalling aspects of this crisis, and I think you saw some of this firsthand, didn't you?
Yes, thank you, Lindsay, and thank you to the organisers for holding this panel today, because look, Sudan is the worst humanitarian crisis of the 21st century. I have just, last week, was in Adre, the Chad-Sudan border, and talking to it. That's a camp of 140,000 Sudanese who have fled. And of those, 85% of them are women and children. And the reality is the stories that you hear are horrendous. Here speaking to one young woman who said to me, she said, most of the women I know, they had bad violence on the way here, but we don't want to talk about it because of the shame. I spoke to another woman who is running a support for victims of sexual violence. She's a Sudanese woman, a psychologist, trained psychologist, who's been providing some just support in the camp, and who said that she estimated the majority of women she thought had been subjected to sexual violence. I've spoken to another aid worker who said in the 20 years that she has worked in conflict and been used to dealing with issues around conflict and sexual violence, never had she seen it on this scale, where she felt in one of the camps she was working in, almost every woman had a story of having been raped along the way. And another Sudanese emergency room's response worker who told me that they had had 3 sisters arrive, all of whom had been raped on the way. The oldest was 13 and the youngest was 8.
Now, this is horrific.
This is a war on women's bodies that
Yes.
is taking place. And I think that the world has to start listening to the women of Sudan rather than the military men who are perpetuating this conflict.
I think we can agree with that. And I'm glad you agree with that. But let me put another question to you, because you, in the area where you were, the sexual violence will have been committed mainly by the RSF and associated militia. Now, they are backed by the United Arab Emirates. Britain still provides weapons to the United Arab Emirates, and some of those small arms have found their way onto the battlefield, which is very disturbing. What is Britain doing to try and pressure the United Arab Emirates to stop supporting the RSF?
So the two different issues there. So let me just briefly deal with the issues around arms flows and the UK controls, because we have very substantial controls. We ensure, in fact, when there were any allegations made, I insisted that all the licenses were reviewed, and 2,000 licenses were reviewed to ensure that there was no leakage, to ensure that there was nothing that any of those licenses was reaching Sudan, and to make sure that the allegations that had been made were unfounded. But if there are any further allegations, we would take the same approach and to review extensively to ensure that that must not happen. But come to the wider issue, because we have seen, obviously, the most horrendous atrocities reported around El Fasher as a result of the RSF attacks on El Fasher. And we are due, as a result of some of the work the UK and other countries have done, we are due to get the report back for the UN fact-finding mission into what has happened in El Fasher to the UN before the end of February, because it is right that we hold people to account for those horrendous atrocities. We have also seen extremely disturbing reports, including around sexual violence, including, as Mossad said, around the use of chemical weapons. And we have had from both sides as well, and some of the SAF issues we have seen with the restrictions on humanitarian aid. And this is a time where Sudan is facing the reports of around 8 million people facing famine. That is the equivalent of the entire population of London, of our capital city. If you come to London, that could be everywhere.
But what I'm asking you about very specifically, and then I'm going to come on to you as well, is about leverage. Again, what leverage does Britain have on the UAE? Because the UAE is supporting the RSF. I know they deny it, but there is plenty of evidence. And it seems to me that Britain has a very close relationship with the UAE. So what I'm asking is, what are you doing to pressure them?
So we raise all of these issues with the UAE, with Saudi, with Egypt, all of the members of the Quad who are working with Mossad and continue to do so. And we also believe that this needs to be wider than the Quad. So I've raised this with the African Union, with all of the neighbouring states, with foreign ministers from all of the neighbouring states of Sudan. Our assessment is there's probably more than a dozen countries who are in some way involved in arms flows, maybe through funding, maybe through manufacture, maybe through transit, maybe through training, in different ways. And like you, I am concerned of evidence that some of those arms flows may be escalating rather than reducing. However, a huge amount of work has been done on what a ceasefire might look like. And that's why I think it's urgent now that there is that international engagement and pressure on all of the parties together, both to prevent arms flows, because at the moment, the reason that those two military sides think there is a military solution when there isn't is because they can still get the access to arms flows. But where we also need the huge amount of pressure, I think we need the same kind of energy and focus and spotlight on Sudan that we had on Gaza through the summer and in the build-up to the ceasefire in Gaza last year.
So let me come to your German counterpart. Tell us what leverage Germany has got. You've talked about 12 countries. I mean, the main ones I think we know about, which are supporting one side or the other, are Saudi, Egypt, UAE, Turkey. What can Germany do? What is Germany doing?
I mean, it's very clear, we are very clear on that, also in the European Union and as German government, that all parties involved need to step up and need to end this man-made human catastrophe. It's not a natural disaster, it's all man-made, and man should stop this catastrophe. And I think what we heard from Mr. Boulos and the Quad Initiative, we support the efforts, but it's clear we can't wait. This cannot go on forever and forever. We need to pressure all parties involved. And we are, at the same time, we are facing this humanitarian catastrophe, the biggest crisis we're facing, as Ms. Cooper just said. So I am also worried not only about a long-lasting ceasefire that we need, I'm worried about the humanitarian situation.
Sure.
We have 10 to 15 million refugees fleeing within or from Sudan,
Yes.
and we are facing public budget cuts everywhere. And this is why it was important to me also that we speak about Sudan at the MSC. And we will host, and we are very honored to host the conference on Sudan on behalf of the third year anniversary in Berlin on April 15 with the UK, with the United States, with the EU, with France and the African Union. And I'm glad that we have a young voice here from civil society.
Who we're just going to come to.
Because what Germany is keen on, and that's why we support also the Quad initiative, is that at the end of the day, a civil-led government has to take up the lead. It's clear neither parties involved can have a political future in Sudan with all the atrocities committed, with all the war crimes committed. So this is why we're supporting also the civil-led movement, which will be also part of the conference in Berlin.
I think this is the moment to turn to Mohammed from the Youth Alliance. Has anything that you've heard on this stage given you any hope? How does it look to you?
Actually, speaking as a Sudanese youth, when I enter the hall itself, I feel very desperate that Sudan itself is being on the sideline of the conference. There is no attention. There is no even people on the ground, like listening. And I think we reached to a point that we need to stop talking. We need to act. I mean, for the European Unions, for the US and everyone involved. I was been in Sudan. I am still in Sudan for the 3 years of war. And since the war started, we have been in the home when the RSF come and kick us out. We've seen the atrocities of the RSF itself on the ground, and the main supply within the country itself. And just to pick up on what Mr. Bose said, the last November, the Mr. Secretary Roberts said, we need to end this. We need to stop supply, to cut off the weapon from the RSF. Yet we still see that the RSF is supplying through the country, within the neighboring countries, and also all over the region that we have. And I think this needs to be stopped. This needs to be stopped based on the documented reports that we have, based on the evidence in which I am and everyone in Sudan has witnessed as a first-hand experiences on the ground. And we need to stop talking. Really, we need to stop talking. We will not wait. We as Sudanese will not wait, because we have suffered a lot. We have suffered a lot.
Can I ask you a question? What do you have Mr. Boulos here next to you. He is the person who is convening all of these different parties to try and come to some kind of peace deal. What is your advice to him? It's not an easy job he's got.
Yeah, I know it's not an easy job, but what, like always said, that repeat the same solutions. We don't need half solutions for our problems, because it will keep repeating its cycle. We need like a long term. If you are talking about ceasefire, we need like a guarantee for the ceasefire itself, because all over the country we have the ceasefires going on. In each spot we have violation of the ceasefire itself. So we need to have a concrete action on the ceasefire itself, how it will be implemented, how it will be controlled, and how it will be guided throughout the way. And I just also want to comment on the humanitarian side.
Please.
We have seen and convened a lot of conferences on Sudan. We have seen a lot of pledge made on, but nothing is delivered on the ground. I have been in Sudan, I was in Khartoum, and we have short-cut funding from everything, from basic life necessity. And I think who's make the pledge need to be committed to that pledge. Otherwise, we are, as I said first, we just keep talking and there is no action.
I think that's a very good point. Can I, at this point, just commend, many of you will be very aware of the emergency response groups, which is the Sudanese initiative. Sudanese who have looked after Sudanese when the international community turned its back. And I think that they are the people we should congratulate more than almost anybody else on the humanitarian front. But Mr. Boulos, I have to I have to get back to you and maybe a challenge which Mohammed brings, that there's enough talking. Because I understand that you bring together all these different parties, but it seems to me that this is the time, it's the time to get nasty, isn't it? Isn't it the time to put real leverage on the countries that are arming these factions? And the US has more leverage. President Trump has more power than anyone else. Come on, you can do it.
I agree with you. We've been quite patient and we've been quite accommodating. We wanted to make sure it's a successful process.
Yeah.
We've been engaging with both sides and all the relevant actors. However, too much time has gone by and it's about time to act. In fact, next week at the UN with the Honorable Secretary Cooper, we're going to have some serious talk and action. There will be some action. We'll start seeing that very soon.
What's the pressure? Because I think that's what's bothering me, that when I talked to Mr. Idris earlier, I don't feel that that's a man under pressure to make a ceasefire. He's going to make 6 points before he lets me ask him a question. What is the pressure you're putting on him? What is the pressure you're putting on Hemeti? What is the pressure you're putting on Abu Dhabi to stop taking the gold which is coming out of Sudan at $5,000 an ounce?
Yes. Yeah. Regarding the external support, our position is very clear, not just us, but all our partners within the Quad and all the other partners. We are totally against any sort of external support that we're seeing, and we're seeing it coming from all sorts of different sources, different supply routes, and to both parties. We're seeing it come to both sides, and this is totally counterproductive, absolutely, to the mechanism and to the process that we're putting in place. So we were waiting to put a full and comprehensive mechanism in place, but it's not just about the ceasefire. It's about the entire peace plan. We have a complete vision. Again, not just at the Quad level, but beyond. We have a complete vision, and the single most important aspect beyond the humanitarian aspect, of course, which is the top priority. And by the way, here, the United States has contributed $2.5 billion since the beginning of this war, just towards humanitarian aid and support, and we remain the single biggest contributor to date on that. Beyond this top priority, we have a comprehensive peace plan that we've proposed, and we're going to work.
I'm still not understanding how. I mean, I've looked at some of the principles of your peace plan. It hasn't been published yet, but I've looked at it. It looks great, but I don't see what is going to make either the parties or those supporting the parties agree to it. They want to keep fighting.
The single most important aspect of this is the political track.
Yes.
And this is going to be Sudanese. I really appreciate what Mohammed said, because we're listening to them. We're talking to so many groups on a daily basis, and we're listening to them. This is going to have to be a Sudanese-led process. And I want to thank the Quintet and all the other partners, the UK and Norway and others that have been contributing to this and that are prepared to host this and work more with the civil society, which is quite vibrant in Sudan, as we all know. So this is going to be a Sudanese solution. We're not going to come here and impose anything. We can probably come up with mechanisms that will help them. We can come up with probably a UN Security Council resolution that will give the legal cover and the umbrella for this work. But it's going to have to be a Sudanese solution. It's going to be a comprehensive national dialogue and leading to a civilian-led government. That's the ultimate goal. I think the Sudanese people are fed up.
Certainly are.
And we've been, like I said, we've been in touch with quite a few groups. They're fed up. They want this to end very, very quickly. Unfortunately, what we heard earlier is not a message of peace. We've been listening to this rhetoric, which is about the military solution, and we are totally against that. So let's keep some hope. Let's look forward to the coming weeks. I think we're getting closer. Let's look forward to that and then take it from there.
We are running out of time, but I want to give Mohammed the last word. So, Mohammed, can we just pass the microphone to you? If you want the people in this room, the people who are watching, what's the one thing you want them to take away from this session about your country, and what's the tragedy in your country?
I think Sudan is no longer accepting empathy in a way that we are desperate, we are suffering, We just need to develop, we need to recover, we need to move on, because it's been like three years of suffering, 3 years of war, and we really need an end to it. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to this session. Thank you. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to the Munich Security Conference for putting Sudan on the main stage, because that is where it needs to be in international relations. And I would also say, slightly sentimentally, because I've been going there for 40 years, in all of our hearts. Thank you very much.